Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to tonight's forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, the Teton County Library, and the Jackson Hole News and Guide, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's forum. This is the first of 3 forums. The second will be tomorrow night and we'll cover the county commission candidates, and the third one will be next Wednesday, a week from tonight, and will involve the SPET and the local state races. So my name is John Hebberger Jr. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. I'll be the moderator tonight, which should be a pretty minimal in the background role. The other key players are John Spina. John, raise your hand. So John is News and Guide reporter. Reade Dornan, sitting next to him, is a League of Women Voters representative. And critically, Karen Jerger, who is the timekeeper for this evening. Now, the purpose of this evening is to provide you, the audience, with an opportunity to learn about our candidates for the town races for the upcoming elections here. So do be reminded that the election date is Tuesday, August 16th. That's 2 weeks from last night. And that you can vote at any of 6 voting centers around the county. And you can also vote now via absentee ballot if you go to the basement of the county building. So the process for this evening is fairly straightforward, and allow me to explain that though. We will focus on the council candidates until 7:15, pretty sharp. We'll have a short break, and I emphasize short, and we will start again with the mayoral candidates at 7:30 sharp. So everybody needs to be back in the room by 7:30. We will be going at that point in time. Each candidate will have 1 minute to provide an opening statement, introduction to introduce themselves, and they will also each have a 1 minute closing statement as well, so right before 7:15. In between, we will have a series of questions that will be posed to the candidates that each will have 1 minute to address, to respond to. There will be 3 sources of, at least 3 possible sources of questions. John Spina from the News and Guide has a series of questions that he's organized. He will start and pose the first question. There are 2 ladies here, maybe they're still outside. Sarah and Dee over here, standing up, have paper cards, and if you have a question that you would like to write down, please signal to them, write it down, and they will carry it up to Reade here. So ideally, the second question will come from some of these materials, that the queries that are posed to Reade. The third opportunity, if you'd like to stand up, introduce yourself, and actually pose a question here at this mic, that opportunity is available too as well. So that will be the third source of questions to the candidates tonight. And we will then cycle through in that sequence for as much time as we have. Please do recognize that time is very limited here. And so I'm sure that for you, as well as for me, everything that could be covered, we just cannot touch on it tonight. So, I've asked both John and Reade, but I also ask you, if you step up to the mic, to ask a very clear and short question so that we can spend the amount of time that is available, as much of it as possible, focused on the candidates' responses. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to our candidates, and we'll start with Jim and work down this way, 1 minute apiece, and again, Karen will be providing our time check as we go along. I think she will also give you a 15-second warning. I'll step in and yank the microphone out of your hand. The other thing I would like everybody to do, please, is to turn off or to turn to vibrate their cell phone, please, so that we don't have those going off in the middle. So, Mr. Stanford, you're up.
Thanks, John. Thanks to the library and the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. My name is Jim Stanford. I'm entering the home stretch of my first term as town councilman. I've lived in this community for 24 years. Prior to being elected to the council, I worked as a journalist. I worked for the newspaper here, did a lot of freelancing. Learned a lot about local, state, and national government and how it works as a journalist, and I also learned a lot about this community, covering everything from youth sporting events to funerals, celebrations, the things that really make Jackson whole, what we all know it to be. And I continue to work as a boatman for Barker Ewing up in Grand Teton National Park. I've worked for the Barker and Ewing families now for 17 summers. I've learned a lot about running a small business from them, and I've also gained a real insight into the conservation heritage of Jackson Hole, which is important to me. It's something that I keep in mind in all that we do on the council.
Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight. When I considered running for the town council, I thought about two things. What could I bring to the table, and would I enjoy the job? What I can bring to the table is a background in finance, experience running a small business, and a history of service on not-for-profit boards. I can identify with workers, employers, and health and human service providers, and I care deeply about all these constituencies. Second, would I enjoy the job? There's a lot happening right now in Jackson, discussions on transportation, housing, land development, regulations. Can we create a more vibrant and livable community with these decisions? I think we can. I chose to live in Jackson like most of you, and I promise if elected to the town council, I will bring a positive, no-nonsense voice to leadership. Thank you.
I planned on standing, so I should just stand. I want to thank you to all of the organizers and to all of you for being here tonight. My name is Jessica Sell Chambers, and I'm running for town council. In 2009, my family experienced a devastating loss when our mother was tragically killed in an accident, leaving my 9-year-old and 15-year-old brother in the care of our father, who struggled with alcoholism and addiction. I was living in New York at the time, doing lots of wonderful things, and it wasn't much of a choice for me to come back to Pittsburgh, where they were living, and take care of them. The reason I tell you this is because I could not have done what I needed to do without the support of a community and the services that our local government provides. We moved to Jackson to have a new beginning for my brothers and for our new family. And we have been here ever since. We have roots. I believe in this place, and I want to put our community first. Thank you.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Jackson Hole News and Guide, and all of you guys for being here, and the library. My name is Hailey Morton Levinson, and it's been a true honor serving our community as your town councilor. This is a service I take to heart, take seriously, and I'm proud to do. Thank you for supporting me through my first campaign and as town councilor. I have led with an open mind, honesty, and level head, and will continue to do so. I am blessed to have learned the value of hard work, hospitality, and kindness from my parents and from being raised in Jackson. These are qualities integral to effectively leading our town. During my first 4-year term in office, I have gained invaluable insight into town and county processes, ranging from budgeting to planning and zoning. This experience and knowledge I have gained have given me a strong understanding of the issues facing our community. I am well qualified to continue my leadership on the council, and I know you are invested in seeing compassionate and dedicated leaders like me succeed.
I'm Judd Grossman. I came to Jackson in 1980 to be a resident, and I've been a professional musician since 1986, operating that small business for 30 years. I also co-founded, along with my wife, Planet Jackson Hole Weekly, which we co-published for 10 years. I'm very passionate about free speech and open dialogue, and I'm hoping to bring that to the council so that we can hear all ideas and work through them by listening to each other and finding out what's the best way forward. I'm married, I have 2 kids, and I'm a real town guy. I've always lived in town, and I kind of recreate in town on my skateboard. I work in town. I'm just all about town, and I love our neighborhood and our alleys and our downtown, and I'd really like to protect and preserve that.
So the first question, what are the key differences between you and your opponents, and how do those differences manifest themselves in office?
I have a background in business. I spent the first 15 years working in banking, and I only got paid if I put transactions together. So I had to work to bring the organization that I work for, the people together, to create solutions for our clients. That's kind of the base. I do have a background in finance. I understand budgeting. I understand planning, strategic planning, and that's kind of my core. I don't know if this is a difference, but I'm doing this primarily or solely because of community service. I don't need to be town councilor. I don't need the job. I want, to serve this community.
So same question. I think we have some very qualified council members as it stands. I think we have some very qualified candidates as it stands. I think what I bring to the table is somewhat of a fearlessness to take decisive actions, not a recklessness in any way, but sometimes I think we just need to make a decision and move forward, because inaction is just as bad as failure, in my opinion. That being said, I think there are more voices that could be heard in our community, and their voices and opinions could be incorporated into decision making. And a strong characteristic that I possess is, or my ability, a strong ability that I have is listening and communication.
All right, so I would say I was raised here. My family has been in the hospitality industry since I was about a year old, and I've learned the value of hard work, as I mentioned. I always joke that I had to work my way to the front desk, and that started with picking up cigarette butts in the parking lot when I was about 6. So I definitely understand. Yeah. I wouldn't say child abuse, Nancy. But I understand how, every aspect of our service industry. And I would also say, having been raised here, I represent a certain voice, and that I'm 30, and I ran when I was 26 and was elected. So the experience that I've gained in the last 4 years makes me really well qualified to represent my age group as well.
I think there's a lot of unique characteristics of everybody that's running. Some of the things that set me apart from some of the folks is that I've run a small business, I've met payroll, I've had to deal with executive decision making when my own money was at stake. I've also lived here a very long time, and I have a real historical perspective of how Jackson has grown and changed, what's important to preserve, and I can put government actions in context. I've seen what's succeeded and what's failed. There's a tendency of government to kind of go around and around trying the same things over and over again, reinventing itself, but not really reinventing, and so I can provide that historical perspective. And mainly, the main difference between me and the rest of the candidates is I oppose the general excise tax increase because I think it's based on flawed plans, and it's not going to actually make a big difference in our housing and traffic problems. And so I'm proposing some real solutions to those issues.
When I ran for council 4 years ago, I liked to think at the time that I had one foot in sort of old Jackson, connections to many of the people that you see out here in the audience today, but one foot in new Jackson and the younger residents. And even though there's a little bit more gray hair in this beard and a little less hair on this head, I think that still holds true today. Mainly over these last 3.5 years, I've gained a lot of experience in how the government works. I delve into the details of government, our capital projects budget. That's how, and our budget in general, that's really how you make the government work, and how you take the public's money and put it into action for the citizens. I also like to think that I bring a lot of ideas to the table in council meetings, proposing small things like a location for a dog park, or a new crosswalk, or a missing sidewalk segment that we can get built. And I think we've made a lot of progress in these last 3.5 years on those type of efforts.
Okay, the next question will come from Reade. It's an audience question.
Okay.
And if, before she announces that, if there's anybody that would like, following this round, to pose a question directly, please do come up here to the microphone.
Yeah, none of these questions is directed at any one person. So I'm just picking them at large, except for there's one question about the 1%, and I think we'll save that till next week. Because there's a forum next week that will cover the 1%, I think, if that's okay with you all. Any objections? No. You do?
Go ahead and pick one and pose it.
Okay. Well, then I'll pick that one, since people want to talk about it. What are 3 things you would do to alleviate our housing crisis? Convince me that I can trust the town and county with the enormous amount of money that would be generated by a 1% sales tax to be spent on housing and transportation. So you got your chance. Convince the audience.
Well, to address, thank you for whoever put that question in, because it's one of the more important questions that we're facing. I would like to address the housing situation in 3 areas: short-term, mid-term, long-term. There is some alleviation that we need in the short term. There are people that are homeless right now. There are people that don't have anywhere to go. They don't have a place to live, and they don't have the funds to leave town. So we need to do something to mitigate that issue immediately, whether that's lifting parking restrictions on the street, so that people who are living out of their cars can continue to do so and work and support this community without the additional hassle of trying to find a safe place to sleep. In the midterm, in between, I think we need to look at renter protections, because there are a lot of people who are having their leases, or they don't have a lease, but they're having their rents renegotiated every 30 to 60 days. And in the long term, we need to understand what it means to get from 60% of housing our workforce to 65, and then make a plan to do that. And these are all very important pieces that will determine how we spend our money going forward.
So when the council and the county were talking about if we wanted to put a vote to the voters about the general penny, I struggled with it. I went back and forth. I said, you know, in my mind, SPET has been something that we've used for many years, and it's been used well. But then I looked at the issues that we're facing with housing and transportation, and ultimately decided that yes, a general penny is more appropriate, because not only do we need to build capital projects, but we need to maintain and operate those projects. And with SPET, we are pretty much required to just build capital. And to make these things lasting, we obviously have to operate and maintain them. So I know it's not lost on the voters that it's a hard decision. And I would say I've always operated under being open and transparent, listening to everyone, and that's what I will continue to do, and that's what I will continue to do as a town councilor.
Jackson is maxed out with people and cars. The first thing we need to do is not expand development rights. What landowners have right now is fine, but we shouldn't expand it. District 2 made the mistake of expanding development rights. Expanded development creates more jobs. That's what's causing our housing crisis. I'm proposing a workforce housing overlay in the commercial urban core of town, where landowners can have significant density bonuses in exchange for deed restricted housing. That's the way to get something done. Our current strategy of low suburban density, low density with very high subsidies is ineffective because we can only build a handful of units or a few dozen every couple years. It won't get the job done. That's why you should not trust the council with the general excise tax increase, because they're planning to double down on past mistakes.
First off, the tax rate is at 6% now, and if both measures pass, both the August vote and the November vote, the tax rate will stay at 6%. That was a key point of the discussion. So this is not a tax increase. Even if the November vote goes through, that's going to be split largely between housing and transportation. It's going to generate roughly $5 to $6 million per year for housing. That's not a large sum of money, I'm sorry to say, when you're trying to build housing in Jackson anymore. And this notion that if you just call for it, that the private landowners will suddenly just build housing is a fairy tale. If we want to control and have affordable housing into the future, permanently deed-restricted housing, we need to put money into it. And you zone for housing, you put money into affordable housing and get your deed restrictions, and you crack down on illegal short-term rentals. And as for trust, we have an excellent staff at Town Hall, and I lean on them every week. And that's if you can't trust some of the people who work there, then we're all headed in a sinking ship.
So I do think it is important to get the land development regulations changed to allow density in certain areas of town, incentivize builders to build deed-restricted workforce housing through bonuses. I think that's important. With the 1%, also, half of it's going to go to transportation. And we need a steady funding stream for our transportation program. If we're asking people to live in Victor, Driggs, Star Valley, expanding START bus service makes those more viable workforce communities. And then I think public-private partnerships are also a way to get housing built. I'm not completely sold on the Hall Street project, but that's an example of something that we could do in the near term to build housing.
Okay, the next question will come from a member of the audience. Please introduce yourself and please pose a short, concise question.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hale. My question is, Snow King has proposed developing more of the mountain. They've proposed at the bottom getting rid of the ball field, moving the parking lot that's next to the Boulder Park, moving it over by the restaurant. They proposed putting a ski lift over between the top of the mountain and Josie's Ridge. And they proposed increasing the ski area to the right and to the left as you look at the mountain. Also putting a restaurant at the top, which involves lighting and so on. What do you think about the plan? Because the town council has to approve. They want the town council to approve what they want, and Richard Teton's already approved what they have planned.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good to see you here. So we recently had a town council workshop on Snow King discussing just this. And what myself and the rest of the council, expressed was that Snow King is, it's all near and dear to our hearts. I grew up skiing on there. We all hike up there. We go to the concerts at the base. And it's really our community hill and really deserves a community discussion. I think some of the proposals that the partners at Snow King have put forth are interesting, and I think they're worth vetting. Obviously, the ball field and the parking area and some of the other land at the base are town-owned, so community-owned. It's owned by the taxpayers, and that's something that we, as a council and as a community, will have a direct say in how that's developed. As far as expanding, it hasn't been approved yet, as far as I know, by the Forest Service, but it is in the process of and about to undergo a NEPA process. So again, I think it's something that we need to work on in tandem with all the different agencies.
I think that it's important that Snow King is viable, but I would like to see Snow King not expanded an inch more than it takes to be viable, and that's going to be a big discussion. I don't want to see the footprint expanded. I think that sometimes ski areas get a pass around here to chop down trees and basically do industrial things in our wildlands. And I wouldn't give them a pass on that. Obviously, we're just an advisory role to the Forest Service, but that's the position I take, is that the footprint shouldn't expand. And also, we have to keep thinking we're maxed out with people and cars, so we need to limit any kind of expansion of development rights to what's absolutely necessary to be viable. And maybe we don't need to expand development rights at all at the base.
This has been an important issue for me for several years now. It's one of the reasons why I ran for council. I live in the neighborhood of Snow King. I ski there. I hike and bike there. I have consistently supported investing in Snow King Mountain as a community ski area, not a commercial amusement park. I oppose the east and west expansion. Some of the other ideas about replacing the summit chair with a gondola sound reasonable to me. I think we need to move very cautiously, and we also need to keep in mind that Snow King as a resort was supposed to function holistically. The owners of the resort were giving enormous development rights at the base of the mountain, and that was supposed to work together with the recreation. And unfortunately, due to financial distress, those have been divested over the years. So I will echo what Hailey said. We're going to have a robust public process, not organized by Snow King, but organized and spearheaded by the town and county, so that we can have a community dialogue on what people want to see both on the mountain and at the base.
I want to see Snow King succeed, and I understand that it has to be financially viable for them to exist. But I also hold it near and dear to my heart. I recreate on the Snow King Mountain every day. And so there does need to be a community dialogue. I agree with Jim, spearheaded by the town and county. And we as a community can decide what development is appropriate. But it is a business, and they are going to need to make a profit in order to survive, but the community should have a big say.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. Don't forget about the observatory on the top of the mountain as well. I am not impressed with the plan. I am not impressed with some of the bullying that I've heard about to some of the residents in East Jackson from the developers. To piggyback on what Jim has said, there seems to have been opportunities over the course of the last several decades that were not utilized appropriately and effectively, and I don't want to move forward or give permissions for more development of Snow King or to increase the footprint without community dialogue, obviously. I don't want to go against the comp plan and our objectives unless we absolutely have to, and I think that we need to review the master plan from, I think it was 2000, in order to determine how we should proceed.
Okay, the next question will come from News and Guide reporter John Spina to Judd.
The town staff has said that they would like to look at rezoning the rest of the town in the coming year. What would be your goals for that rezoning process, and how would you reach those goals?
My first goal with rezoning is to focus development into the core of town. And to me, the walkable core is Midtown, downtown, the South Gateway. That's the place for density. Right now, And the other goal is to get it done, because this comprehensive planning process has taken so long that it's disenfranchised a huge number of residents. I mean, when you start making comments 10 years ago, and many councils ago and many commissions ago, how many people are still even living in Jackson Hole that made comments 10 years ago on the plan? So first goal is to get it done. Second goal is to use wise planning that protects our quiet neighborhoods, and that focuses development into the core, the walkable core of downtown, where people do not have to drive all the time. So that's my focus in rezoning.
I think my focus as we move into the rezoning for the rest of town is going to be looking for opportunities for more housing while preserving community character. And when I look around the community, there are areas, especially in West Jackson, you look at South Highway 89 area, it's a commercial strip. That type of development can be redeveloped into more of a mixed-use neighborhood and the kind of walkable neighborhood that Judd is envisioning. I think that there are ways to blend density into our existing neighborhoods and still preserve the character. Accessory units is one way, duplexes, bungalow courts, these are the kinds of innovative zoning techniques that other communities have utilized and are able to still have the green feel and a neighborhood feel, but also house more people. And I think it's time for us to look at Northern South Park. It's something that we put off for a long time, but the comprehensive plan has called for us to get to that, and I think it's going to be critical going forward as we're looking at our community housing needs.
I'd like to see the land development regulations completed all at once for the rest of the town, so that we have a good roadmap of how we can develop. And this really should get done in the next year. We follow the comp plan with increased density and walkability in the areas adjacent to the town core. That would be Midtown and just east of it in Jackson. And, you know, we really look to create better efficiency, mixed use on buildings, going up higher as appropriate. But there's a lot we can do with the zoning to create a better community.
Thank you. I would echo what Anne and Jim have said with regard to housing being a priority with our zoning and LDRs. What I envision is having two centers of town. The downtown core is predominantly for tourists, and there's not a lot of opportunity or commercial space for locals, for retail, anything that's affordable for us. And so I do think by zoning appropriately and intelligently towards the new post office and in this area of town to make it more friendly for us locals who live here and need to drive to Idaho Falls to get any of our shopping done would be wise. I do believe we need more density and intensity in line with the comp plan, and maybe we do have to think about extending our building heights to 4 stories in appropriate locations. We need to be realistic about the need for housing, and we're not going to get it from just piecemealing, you know, houses here and there. We do need to do more.
I agree with much of what's been said. I am glad that I voted in favor of moving towards looking at all of the zoning together versus just district by district. And our work plan for this year is to look at all of the zones together and specifically focus on residential. So what you've heard tonight is similar to what I'm going to say, is that I want to focus on downtown and all of town and increasing density. That's something that we agreed to in our comp plan. We need to increase density in town in order not to sprawl. And I think that we can really make an excellent, livable, walkable, cool city with increased density. Granted, I want to look at each neighborhood and make sure that what we're proposing, whether it be a multifamily or kind of what Jim said, bungalows, is appropriate per neighborhood. And I look forward to the community dialogue that will come with this.
The next question is an audience question, and Reade has it written down here, and we'll pose it to Jim Stanford initially. and then we'll come back to another audience verbal question.
Okay, actually, I'm going to put a couple of questions together. All of them, they're follow-up questions to what you were just talking about. One is asking about the increase in density in single-family neighborhoods by allowing accessory residential units, ARUs. Do you support this? What do you think is most effective approach for ensuring homeowners are informed? Well, that's another question. And then here's another density question. Are you going to allow 4 stories everywhere? So those are more specific density questions.
I'll take the last question first. The answer is no. We had a community dialogue about this for 5 years. It produced a comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan calls for 3 stories, and it calls for the 3rd story to be stepped back. And it's been my job to uphold that. So I've consistently advocated that in our discussions. And the first part of the question was
had to
about
do with ARUs.
ARUs, accessory
which
units.
Are, you
Yes.
want to define that and then say
ARU is an accessory residential unit, and it could be a garage apartment, it could be a basement apartment, sometimes called a mother-in-law apartment. It could be a little cottage on your property, separate from the main house. And I did support the action that the council just took. I've been to Portland, Oregon, and been on walking tours to look at neighborhoods to see how accessory units can be blended into single-family neighborhoods effectively and preserve the character. I think it's a way that possibly can get us some more housing without sacrificing our community character. I think that it's a way for homeowners to be able to realize some rental income and provide long-term housing to people who work in the community, and it also provides more housing for those people who are so desperately seeking it right now.
When I was knocking on doors, a woman said, "We need to build a skyscraper by Smiths for workforce housing." And I was like, "Oh, a Jackson skyscraper, 4 stories." I do support the accessory rental units. It does allow homeowners to meet, to get additional income and meet some of the high cost of housing. 4 stories where appropriate and selectively. I think the comp plan, calls for 3 stories, and I think for the most part that's appropriate. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for the question. I too would agree that 4 stories is appropriate in some locations, such as near the Center for the Arts, near the Marriott Hotel. This is an appropriate location for a 4-story building that we could have rental units in. Right now, all of our target audience for the housing is above the socioeconomic strata that we need to focus on. We need rental units, which means we need density, which means we need 4 stories in some places. I am a huge fan of the comp plan. I don't think anyone can say otherwise in general. But in this instance, we do need to have, we need to motivate developers. We need to enable philanthropists who want to come and develop. We need to enable them to do so, and we need to make it lucrative for them. With regard to the ARUs, my husband and I, we're going to take advantage of this. It will be really helpful for us to meet our mortgage, and I would like to caution though, I think that ARUs have already been used, and we need to ensure that renter protections are in place, because otherwise people are just going to take advantage of our renters and raise rents and just try and get the most amount of money. Thank you.
So I voted in favor of the accessory residential units, and you've heard before that this is a way of blended density, and what that means to me is that you have an attached accessory unit, so you actually aren't seeing a whole lot of new buildings going up. You might have a detached one, but the maximum size is going to be about 800 square feet. So again, your neighborhoods aren't going to physically change that much. And it's a self-regulating law, because just because we allow it doesn't mean you have to do it. So we had a good discussion on Monday night that, one neighborhood wasn't in favor of it, and about 85% of the residents wouldn't have an ARU. So therefore, that neighborhood isn't going to see a whole lot of change in the ARU sphere. And then also going on to 4 stories, I'm open to the discussion. I think that there are appropriate places for it. They're, up against hillsides. It can be, dwarfed by the mountains. And it's something that we'll talk about with each issue.
Right now, ARUs are allowed already in 70 or 80% of town. This whole discussion lately has been about extending them into the periphery, into the single-family neighborhoods, and I'm totally against that. The single-family neighborhoods are supposed to be single-family, as stated in the comp plan, to allow accessory units could double or triple the density. The idea that not everyone's going to take advantage of it is really poor planning. We know from the way Jackson Hole's developed that things we had no idea people would do, they're doing them right now. And the neighbors right now might not want to do it, but they're going to sell, and the next people are going to do it, and so you'll double or triple the density and the traffic. 4-story buildings, of course, and the place for them is in the downtown walkable urban commercial core. That's how we get density done, and that's the place for it without damaging stable neighborhoods.
Okay, the next question will come from the audience, so if you would come up, introduce yourself, and provide a short question.
My name is Eric Ebling. This is a community philosophy question. I'd like to hear your thinking about this development versus housing debate. Just a brief observation, 5 white faces. I mention that because my origins are not an economically privileged, mostly ethnically narrow power structure community. There are 1,000 pathways to Jackson. Development is a dirty word. I can sing that song. When we say that, we're talking about people who have creative, ambitious, imaginative, entrepreneurial ideas that would like someday to think about office space and floor space and doors and a parking space, etc. Here's my question. Is it mutually exclusive to be robustly supportive of economic development and robustly supportive of affordable housing in this community? That's my question.
No. As people move from service jobs to other jobs as they age in this community, we need economic development. There's got to be jobs for them to move into. And so putting our mind together, what else can we be doing other than real estate and tourism, I think is an important discussion to have. I don't think we're going to be the tech center, but can we have other kind of jobs in this community? It also will result in a higher wage for people. Tourism jobs tend to be low-wage jobs. And so I think it's thoughtful, or we need to be thoughtful and strategic about that when we think about our future.
So may I just have clarification on the question? Are we talking about diversification of our local economy or development versus affordable housing, and can we have our cake and eat it too? But is it diversification or development?
I'll preface that with what I hate the word development because it's an easy pejorative, okay? And what I think about when I hear that is this ability to be invisible about what we're talking about. Is individuals who haven't been here since 1980, who haven't had the chance to have businesses when it was a lot, take nothing away from anybody, a lot different economic reality, that people come here, they come here in a lot of ways. And they have ideas, they have ambitions, they have creativity, they want to do this here, just like we all came here to want to do this here. There's an implication when you're against development to say we've drawn a line, we're here, we've claimed, you go away. Stop bothering us with needing toilets and doors, etc. Their dreams are important. Their possibilities could really make a difference in this town. I'm really interested in your answer, ma'am, because you really spoke specifically about the vertical possibility. I'd love to hear your idea about a creative vertical change in this town, because to me, that seems to be an avenue of real possibility.
That's a lot to take in. And I've only got 60 seconds. So I guess if you ask Jonathan Schechter, it's not possible to have our cake and eat it too, but I do think, as of right now, there are people that are sacrificing in one way or another. And I do think, I don't share the sentiment about development being a pejorative term. It is all-encompassing. I do think that there will have to be some sacrifices made across the board with all community members, and I don't think that any one group should have to bear that burden. I think right now a lot of the small business or small developers in town are not able to do things because of the way things are zoned. I'd like to change that. I'd like to just make it more livable and more friendly to the local, the person that's here dedicating their time and their labor to the community. And vertically, as far as density and intensity, we definitely need to improve that. And we're having a brain drain of sorts. Our kids can't come back here. We don't have any younger people with innovative drives and ideas. So, it's going to require sacrifice across the board. I hope that answered your question. It was a tough question.
Thank you. Good question. It reminds me of when you were my substitute teacher at Jackson Hole High School. So, have to call you out on that. But I would say that economic development and housing go hand in hand. And it's actually been suggested to me from some of my colleagues across the state that our affordable housing crisis could be looked at to be funded through an economic development way. And I say that because, or as alluded to, I want to see generations come back to Jackson. I would never want to say no more people are welcome, because we're all, we came here at one time or another. And if we say no more development and we essentially pour, amber over all of town, it'll only make land prices increase. And it'll only make the second home and third and fourth home market increase. So it's something to look at hand in hand, and it's something that I'm always looking for new ideas for.
This is a great topic. There's unlimited demand for Jackson Hole because we've kept it awesome, and because it started out awesome before we got here. Right now, we're maxed out with people and cars. Right now, in our plan, we could about double population, and there's millions of square feet left of commercial space to develop. So we're going to have to hold on tight to what's going to happen to us in the future. But I think we should be heading towards a build-out if we're going to ever preserve what's special about our neighborhoods, our open space, our wildlife habitat. We can't have exponential generation after generation expanding Jackson Hole until it's got 200,000 people. So we're going to head towards a build-out one way or another. I respect development rights that exist. I don't want to add to them. That's the no-brainer about how to deal with our housing situation. And I think the way to deal with the housing situation is to create density and to go vertical in the commercial urban core, as long as every new development right that's granted is a deed-restricted right.
When you're in a hole, stop digging. It seems obvious, but we have a tremendous deficit of affordable housing in our community. And every time we add another hotel, we're adding to that deficit. And if you think that you can put housing, a token amount of housing on top of commercial development and expect to ever catch up, again, that's a fairy tale. So I've consistently advocated holding the line on commercial development and zoning for more residential and less commercial. And with community support, we were able to change the whole tide of the District 2 zoning discussion. As for business opportunity, it's a free market. You know, there's office space, there's retail space available. Judd mentioned entitlements that haven't yet been built. Get space, get financing, outcompete. I mean, people start restaurants, people start businesses here all the time, and if it won't work for you here, maybe it'll work for you in Lander or Pinedale or Sheridan or somewhere else.
Okay, next question will come from John Spina, News and Guide reporter, to Jessica.
Assuming the general sales tax doesn't pass in November, how would you go about funding housing and transportation projects, especially keeping in mind that state funding is shrinking?
Well, that's a conundrum. It's my hope that it does pass because services cost money and we expect quality services from our government. And I guess the only answer really is to take austerity measures across the board. Unlike what the state has done and cut individual departments where services are just not provided in one area, I think that would be seriously detrimental to our community. And so I guess we just have to tighten our belts and see where we can shave things off and find extra money. But I know that as it stands, you know, our police department, for instance, our police officers aren't even paid competitive wages relative to the rest of the country. So, I mean, it's something to think about. We expect quality services, but some people don't want to pay for them. So I would just encourage everybody to think about how we need to pay for these things and vote yes so that we don't have to deal with this issue come November.
It'll certainly be difficult if this tax doesn't pass, and we won't be making the progress that our community has asked for, and that's housing 65% of our workforce in the Valley. That being said, there are other taxes we can look to. One is the lodging tax. Another that's been suggested is a real estate transfer tax. Unfortunately, both of those don't bring in quite the amount that we would need, and they require state legislation to change or to create. And then, you know, property tax is never a popular one in the town of Jackson and not something that I'm advocating, but that's another tax we could look at. Otherwise, it's, you know, really just looking at our general fund and our budget. But I can tell you, after being on the council for 4 years and going through 4 cycles of budgets, or 3, that we run a really tight ship. And that we do pay our police officers competitively for the region, although I would like to pay them more so that they could live in Teton County. So, thank you.
We have to defeat this general excise tax in November. I thought the tax was for housing and traffic. Now I'm hearing it's for police. It's already expanding. It seems like it's a blank check. And it's only going to be traffic and housing by resolution. It's not going to solve the traffic and housing problem. The housing would cost $1 billion and hundreds of acres of land to do it the way we're doing it, to get to 65% with these massive subsidies, massive unsustainable subsidies. The traffic portion of the plan that this tax is for starts with START, which right now handles 1% of our traffic. When we're done with $100 million or more in 20 years, START will handle 3% of our traffic. These are not solutions. We're being told if we care about housing and traffic, vote for this increase. It's false. And SPET is the way that we should be funding specific projects with community input and community oversight.
It's appropriate that we're holding this forum here tonight while outside the streets are a construction zone, and I hope not too many of you got cracks in your windshield, or like me, were dodging chips on the street on your bicycle as you traveled here tonight. We're resurfacing our roads, our streets on the cheap. We're doing this chip seal, which is not a very good method for anything but driving, really, because we're saving $500,000 a year by doing it. And we really need the money to resurface our roads with a better surface that works for all modes of transportation. I'm optimistic that this tax vote is going to succeed. Our tax structure in Teton County has remained the same since 1993, and the cost of providing services since then has risen astronomically by comparison. So we're keeping the tax rate the same. We're just simply asking voters to change the structure of that tax rate because it's a more effective way of funding our local government. You cannot buy fuel and pay salaries on a specific purpose tax, which is how we've built all these great facilities for many years, and we just haven't been able to keep pace in actually maintaining and running them.
So I would like to see a permanent source of funding for START, and you could increase the lodging tax. You can't change the mix of the lodging tax without getting state approval, but you can increase it. You do SPET for specific housing projects. Do you explore a real estate transfer tax? Again, that's tough. You'd need state approval, but I think you'd structure it so it's over a certain transaction size, like $2 million, and that might be viable. And then you'd have to incentivize the private sector by giving them density bonuses if they build workforce housing. I mean, if that's what happens if the general revenue tax doesn't pass.
Okay, the next question will come from a written question from Reade. You want to read one to us, and we'll start with Hailey for this round.
Yeah, again, I'm going to put 3 or 4 together because we've got
Just
so
put
many
them together tightly.
questions. and mainly these 4 questions have to do with your vision for traffic congestion. And a lot of you have spoken already to the possibilities of a new START money, but people want to see an overall plan. They want to see what a larger vision you might have. So one is, what about parking? How do you see this being paid for? Is it solely through the additional 1%? As we increase density and plan, what is the short-term and long-term, et cetera?
Let's cut it off right there and go to that as a question.
That's a lot to unpack. So alternative transportation works when we make it more convenient than the car and when we make it safe and easy for all user types. And I've been proud to support different sidewalk initiatives, better START routes, increased bicycle routes and signage, just to, chip away each day at making it easier. I also lead by example. My family has 1 car, and I walk pretty much everywhere. Another, Judd had mentioned that in 20 years, we'll spend however much money and only 3% of our transportation will be taken care of through START. That's also taking into account a doubling of the population. So to me, that's actually a pretty good deal because we'll have twice as many cars, but it'll be less because we're covering 3%. And, public transportation is expensive. We need to have it at more stops so that it makes it convenient for people on the village road to take it. I didn't get into parking.
Have I mentioned that Jackson is maxed out with people in cars? We have to stop expanding development rights. That's the first thing, as Jim says, stop digging the hole. Second thing we have to do is focus our development into the walkable urban core where people don't have to have cars. And my workforce housing overlay is to, I want to have significant density downtown and to remove the parking requirement. That's the most radical thing that's been said here. And the reason for it is that we're maxed out with cars, and parking makes housing unaffordable and is the biggest roadblock to density. And so the workforce housing overlay is a solution to traffic as well as a solution to housing. And the other elephant in the room is the only way we're really going to fix our traffic is to also expand, optimize, and connect our roadway system. Nobody wants to hear it. We've had our heads in the sand for 20 years. But as long as we do these other things as well, limit development, it's time to actually make our roads function.
I rode my bike here this evening from East Jackson, and just along Snow King Avenue, I passed 38 cars that were stuck in gridlock. So I think the first thing we can do is changing our behavior, not just biking when we can and taking advantage of really good Start Bus service, but altering the times we take trips, going to the store, driving across town. For most of the year and at most times of the day, our road network still functions pretty well. I think that the council and the county commission have made a lot of progress in trying to lay a groundwork forward. We have a town streets plan, we have a town bike network, we have an integrated transportation plan, but every piece of any transportation plan costs an enormous amount of money. People say, why don't you just bus folks in from Victor or Driggs? Each Start Bus costs us nearly $500,000. You have to have somebody to drive that bus. You've got to have a maintenance facility to take care of it. So really the vote is critical. We're going to limp along. And I do concur with Judd to a certain extent on connectivity of our road network. That's what our transportation plan does. It holds us accountable. If we don't shift behavior, we will have to widen or build new roadways.
Yeah, transportation planning needs to be integrated with housing solutions. And if we're going to be pushing density downtown, and I do agree, kind of easing up on the parking requirements because those parking spaces are expensive, we're going to have to be able to provide alternatives for people. Is it a rideshare app? Is it Zipcar? Is it greater Start Bus to remote parking? It's hard to get people to totally give up cars. Seasonal workers, sure, but year-round workers, I think it's, you can't deny people like to recreate. You can visit Jackson in the winter and not rent a car, but you can't in the summer. You need to rent a car. So do we look at expanding START service to the park, to Teton Village? We need to be creative about things to fix the congestion. Thank you.
I would agree that we are not going to fix any of our transportation issues without addressing housing and zoning and LDRs and all of these other things. None of these things occur in a vacuum, and there's research to show that just getting people onto buses actually results in more cars on the road because people see empty roads, and so they get back into their cars and drive again. So they're not easy solutions. We have to attack this problem from many directions. Like Ann was saying, it needs to be integrated with the housing issues. To address the parking issues, we resemble a metropolitan area in so many more ways than just our wealth inequality. In other places, if you don't want people driving cars, you charge them for parking. Why we have free parking everywhere, I don't know. I mean, that would be a way to generate revenue, keep people from driving unless they want to pay for the parking when they get there. And if we put expectations on people who move to Jackson that we are a more walkable town and that you park your car in a long-term lot out, south of town and you use it for long journeys or road trips, then, that's what they'll do. They'll know coming here that that's what we expect.
Okay, this next question will be the last question so that we can get to the 5 minutes of wrap up. So I would ask the question to be short and that your responses be on time, please.
Okay, my name is Lori Kahn. I have a process question. Town Council is currently hearing an ARU ordinance to increase density in all neighborhoods in Jackson, including single-family neighborhoods. I walk door to door in my neighborhood, and 88% of my neighbors didn't know this and thought that the comp plan prevented this. So the process question is, since homeowners don't seem aware, what do you think is the most effective approach for ensuring homeowners are informed and getting their input?
One of the really frustrating things about the way government works is that most people would just like to feel like things are going okay downtown at the council chambers and we just are going to let them handle it. I've noticed by going downtown and seeing what's going on that a lot of things are going wrong. And So we need to engage the public, but also the council has a habit of listening to and responding to, or you could say pandering to, whoever yells the loudest. And the people that are just living their lives wake up one morning and find that the density in their neighborhood is doubled, or there's all kinds of crazy things going on. So we have to not only engage public as much as we can. I know that the council tries hard. It's hard to pierce that veil. But also, the council has a responsibility to listen to the best ideas rather than the people that are yelling the loudest.
Judd, we didn't pander to the people yelling the loudest about the Start bus on their street. There were no fewer than 6 public charrettes or public open houses, 4 of those and 2 council discussions that on that topic. And it's frustrating. Apathy is frustrating. People are busy. I understand. You elect us because you trust us to make good decisions. Since I've been on the council, I've pushed for open and transparent government, and along with Hailey, helped the town institute streaming of every town council meeting, and they are archived on video. So I don't know what more we could do to make our proceedings more accessible to the public. It's a problem that there are articles in the newspaper. In this specific instance, we heard the input after the fact and we responded to it and we compromised, and I think we came up with a good solution. So I think government works here local government works here pretty well.
I would actually agree with Jim. I knew about the public forums being held at the library, at the high school, maybe social media that could have been used, but I mean, the town is actually really transparent. You can go online, watch a meeting, you check the agenda item that you're interested in, you can click on it and you can watch the meeting. So some of it is incumbent on citizens to pay attention early, so that something that you don't like doesn't end up being built in your backyard. It's our responsibility as citizens.
So thank you for your question, and I absolutely hear you. Jumping into this, there is quite a learning curve for getting the background and the context of everything that goes on, and so I have to agree that as transparent as it is, it's really hard to stay on top of everything in real time and know what's happening in your neighborhood. And you couple that with the fact that most of us some of us are working 2 jobs to pay mortgages, to pay rents. They're afraid that their rents are going to go up, that they have housing insecurity. So, actively participating in your local government and staying abreast of everything that you need to stay abreast of is problematic in my mind. So I think one of the largest things that we can do as a council would be to try and make this town more livable for the people that support the town and actually are working and adding to our community.
Thanks for your question, and good to see you again. I would say, like Jim mentioned, it's something really important to me as well to have open and transparent meetings. And I think that we do a good job of that as council. I'm always looking for kind of more creative ways of engaging people. So for example, we've used a website interface to talk about the lodging overlay. We've recently opened a mobile workshop, which probably should have come to your neighborhood. But it's a traveling workshop where we open it up next to maybe where a development is going to happen or where some LDRs are changing, and people can see, oh, hey, what is this? And this, for this specific instance, I think it went to 4 different locations. It's always, we always advertise in the paper, but that's probably not as exciting of an advertisement. So it is, something that I want to continue to work on to be better at. But, there's only so much that we can do as well with the funds that we have.
Okay, the last part of the council candidates session here will be a 1-minute wrap-up. We'll start with Judd and go back towards Jim's since we did it the other way at the start. And let me remind everybody that we will take a short break, and at 7:30 sharp, we will begin the portion of the meeting with the mayoral candidates.
Okay, so I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm very passionate about this stuff. I'm also super objective in that I really want to find the right thing to do. I want to listen to everybody. I sit down with people that maybe don't agree with me, and I want to discuss it and find out who's got the best ideas and move forward with it. And I'm going to be the person on the council that's going to be the contrarian, frankly. I'm going to be the one that makes sure that we're doing the right thing. I'm not going to go along to get along. And with that said, let me get a few more licks in about some of these issues. One is the general excise tax increase is a tax increase because we're playing a reckless game with SPET. It's a reckless shell game. We've had SPET for 30 years. It's funded an enormous amount of what's happened around here. We're hiding it behind our back, or the council is, and saying, don't worry, SPET's gone now. Just do this general excise tax increase, and then SPET is going to come back because there's tens of millions or more of initiatives that are waiting to come back on SPET, and that's going to be the 7th cent. So don't be fooled by people saying that this is not a tax increase.
Thanks again for being here tonight. In my 4 years, I am proud to have led and supported initiatives in town employee housing and community affordable housing. I will continue to be a champion of workforce housing and work with the whole community to find solutions. I have supported more sidewalks, increased signage and routes for bicycles, improved snow plowing, and improved START routes during my time on the council as well, and will continue to support initiatives that increase non-motorized transportation, use, and safety for all ages and abilities. The issues facing our community are not easy nor fixed overnight. Like you, I am concerned about the character of our town and how we ensure it remains the Jackson we know and love. It is the character of place and of people we seek to hold on to, providing opportunities for working families, small businesses, environmental stewardship, and ensuring our quality of life are paramount to the future of Jackson, our home. These are the values I weigh in making decisions as your town councilor, and these are the values I will continue to fight for. Please vote for me August 16th.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you again to the organizers, and thank you all for running. When we have more people running for office, we have better electeds at the end, so that's a really phenomenal thing to have so many people jumping into the game. I know what it's like to be in many shoes. I know what it's like to be a single mother. I know what it's like to experience loss. I know what it's like to live from paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to be an outsider in a community. So I just want everyone to know that I will be your advocate. I pick up the phone, I respond to emails, and I will continue to do that when you vote for me for town council.
So housing has been a problem for decades, I hear. I've only been here 15 years, but and I think we've made it way too difficult to actually build workforce housing. Using the comp plan as our guide, we need to be more proactive with zoning to create the community we want to be. Retaining and replenishing our workforce is a priority for me. I don't want to hear people leaving because it's too hard to raise a family. When I look at my neighborhood, which is very much a working neighborhood, we've lost 2 houses in the last year to second homes. We won't get them back. Proactively trying to protect our existing housing supply is essential. I'm running because I really believe in services to this community, and I have the skills that our town council needs. Thank you.
Since being elected 4 years ago, I feel like I've worked hard to represent the public interest in the council chambers week in and week out. I do my best to come prepared, ask good questions, do my homework. I've learned a lot working with our staff. I've taken the time to meet with many of you, listen to your ideas, and take your input. And this is a time of year when candidates make lots of promises and there's a lot of talk, and even a lot of the coverage in the newspaper is about exactly what candidates are saying. As I said earlier, all of our council meetings are archived on video, and I would welcome or invite any of you to just go to townofjackson.com and click on any meeting and watch for yourself, judge for yourself. I think there's a lot of excellent work coming out of Town Hall. I'm willing to serve for another 4 years, and if you concur, I'd ask for your vote on August 16th. Thanks.
Okay, join me in thanking our candidates. 12 minutes from now, 7:30 sharp, we will begin the mayoral candidate section of tonight's forum. So please be back sharply then.